Hey, I'm Marty McDonald, and you've tuned in into the Audacity of Ambitious Women. This podcast is for all women who are ready to jump boldly into their next stage of life. Whether it's business or personal, it's time to be audacious. So let's get started. I am excited to welcome the next ambitious woman to the podcast, Marissa Allen. Marissa is the founder of the Cookie Society. She is a remarkable entrepreneur and baker, recognized for her tasty treats and inspiring journey. Her passion for baking and her dedication to perfection led to establish her own successful cookie business, gaining widespread acclaim and a devoted following. Through innovative flavors and her commitment to quality, Marissa has carved a unique niche in the culinary world, captivating taste buds and hearts alike. Marissa, this season of the podcast, we are talking about the audacity of the pitch. And listen, I cannot wait to get into the conversation about your story. It is so inspiring to me. And listen, your cookies are the truth. I just need everybody to know. If you don't live in the state of Texas, I need you to go online. I need you to have these delivered. Like, you have an incredible product. And listen, this is just the beginning for you. So welcome to the Audacity of Ambitious Women.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I think this is something that all entrepreneurs, especially our women entrepreneurs, need to learn. So
yes. Okay. I have a couple of stats I want to share with you, and I want to get your reactions from them. 48% of salespeople or people who pitch never even make a single follow-up attempt. 44% of salespeople or people who pitch give up after one follow-up call, and 66% of buyers prefer to be contacted via email. Do any of these stats resonate with you?
they do, because the follow-up is huge. Even if it's just thank you for your time, or if they give you some harsh feedback like, thanks, I needed that, I'm going to work on that. Even if it's an immediate no, I think the follow-up is so important because they're going to remember that. It's so easy to forget somebody who doesn't follow up.
Can we just dig in and you tell us what follow-up practices have you put into place? Because there's an art to following up
Absolutely.
and not being annoying.
Absolutely. I think there's an art to, number one, being authentic in the follow-up and thanking someone for their time. I don't think it needs to be the minute you walk out the door. I've been known to send cookies, so it's easy for us. We'll send some cookies, especially if we talk about them. I love to ask people what they like, their flavors. That's kind of my foot in the door. And then I'll follow up with cookies and a card. So I love stationery. I have some that says my name. A handwritten note goes so far. Yes. If that's not an option, though, I think the least you can do is an email. And don't forget to thank the assistant if they have one.
Oh, that's huge. Really good. Because the assistant is normally doing the scheduling, doing the emails. You got to be friends with the assistant.
You do. They unlock the door.
That's so good. Okay, Marissa, tell us about your journey. How did you get here? You just whipping up cookies, tell us the thesis.
It did. It started with just whipping up cookies. I was food blogger in my previous life while my husband was in the NFL, his previous life. And I think we had just had our second child and we were going on a little trip, little vacation. So he took me to New York City and I looked up all the viral foods. And we ended up standing in line for Levain Bakery. And we stood for half an hour, y'all. He was not happy about it. But I was like, no, I heard about these. It's the best cookie in the world.
Yeah.
And I was just so excited. And we're in the line and people are telling us what to get. They're telling us that they come every week. And I was just blown away by the community aspect of it. Yeah. But we finally get in this, had to be 400 square foot space, get one of everything. And our lives were changed. Our lives were changed with that cookie. And it was an experience. It wasn't just I got a really good product delivered to my hotel room. It was a whole process from the taxi to the line. We walk across the street and we start calling people because this thing was so good. And it just really stuck with us. And my husband, I'm competitive, and he was challenging me man, I'd love to have that cookie again. But we live in Texas and it was not an option. Yeah. So I got in the lab and I started working on cookies. And at first it was really just to, hey, you don't need Levain, you got me, to my husband. But I got pretty close, but I was like, this isn't even my favorite style of cookie. Yeah. Let me see what I can do. And I was just possessed with this desire to make cookies. I was sending them to the locker room. You came to my house, there were warm cookies. Cookies are a love language. Food's a love language. And I was anybody and everybody who knew me got a cookie between 2016 and 2018 before we started the business.
Wow.
So it was never the goal to start the business.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And I think they sell their cookies now frozen.
They do.
I've gotten them at Central Market before.
They do.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And their cookie is really good. I'm sure it tastes way different in the store too than the frozen, but that's good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Okay, so you were like, all right, I'm experimenting in food blogging. I love it sounds like you love to create experiences with food. It feels like that's a part of your story. So how did the Cookie Society start?
A lot of encouragement from my husband. He had a teammate that tried to buy some. Okay. He called me. He's like, how much for a dozen? And I was like, I don't know. And we came up with the number on the fly. I could not remember what it was. But that was the first time I realized that passion could be turned into a money-making endeavor. And from then on, we sat at the table and he's like, you should go for it. He was, I think, in year 7 of his career, which is a really long NFL career. He was incredibly blessed to have had such a long career, but we knew that it would end eventually. Yeah. And he's like, do you want to sell cookies? We had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. It seemed insane. But we started looking up names and that community aspect kept coming up. So that's where the society came from. We wanted it to be inclusive. We wanted it to be something you told your friends about that they wanted to be a part of and involved with. And the names were all available. Like all the social handles, it felt like a sign from God.
Wow.
And we did everything that night. Applied for the LLC, applied for some trademarks, found the website, the URL, and we just kind of went with it. So
it's so funny because your story is a story that most women can really connect and resonate with, right? Finding transition, right? Of recreating after an old going into a new. Let me tell you this really quick story. So I think we were connected before some kind of way by somebody. I feel like I've heard of your brand before. We just kind of reintroduced ourselves to one another. But my husband actually found you on Instagram. And he was like, I saw her story on Instagram. You should connect with her. There's something about her story that feels so community oriented. I think you guys would like really do well and mesh well together. And that's how I found you. But I think that you're doing a great job of creating that community story through all of your endeavors, through what you're doing, I think he saw a video of you and your husband and y'all were making it and doing all of the things that really like drove him to saying, oh, you should connect with her type of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, okay, so you're about to start, you're charging for the cookies. It's a dozen, you putting a price out there. And then didn't like the pandemic happen? Like
Yes. The pandemic happened, and I think a lot of people like, you were so brave. And I was like, I was already going for it. So still brave, but at that point I was paying rent. That project was so far behind our first store in Frisco. And we opened up the same week that stay-at-home order went into effect. So my contractors...
That was the first week that you were supposed to open, period.
Yes.
And then the world closes down, literally.
Whole world shuts down.
Wow.
Whole world shuts down. We cancel any sort of festive. I think we ended up with some balloons. Couldn't even unlock the door to let people in, just for the safety of our team. So we were like car hops. We'd run to the car with a laminated menu, but don't touch it. And we're like, do you want anything? And then we'd run back in and fix your box.
Wow.
We were only open for like 4 hours a day. And I'll never forget this guy in a really big pickup truck. And he was trying to be kind, but he was like, I sure hope y'all make it. This is a pretty good cookie. But it was just that far-fetched at the time. That she's trying to start selling cookies. We don't even know what's going on tomorrow. You know, like there's this thing we've never heard of. People are getting sick. And you're trying to sell cookies. It was very, the audacity of it, right?
How were you feeling in the moment? I can only imagine starting something new in an unknown, right? Like the world is unknown. You're starting something new that's already unknown, right? Yeah. Like what gave you the courage to keep going in that type of climate?
I'm sure you can relate to this, but my little babies. Yes. I've got a little girl, and my only goal is to raise a strong and spirited young woman. Yeah. Like that is it. You can do whatever you want, but I want you to work for something. I want you to know you're capable. And at that point, there's no turning back. You know, we're paying rent, and mommy's got this idea and we're going to go for it. And they were at home at the time because the schools were shut down and they were so young, they weren't old enough to be in primary school yet. And so shout out to all of our moms and family, grandparents. They really helped. We would not be here without them. But that was the biggest part of it. And I think it was just, the whole thing has been kind of driven by God because as rough as a time and as stressful as a time as that was, I was very stressed and scared. I'm like, oh, we made $800 today. Like, that does not pay rent. But it was really just faith. It was just like, we got to keep going. We have no choice. And then Oprah called, and that helped. That helped a lot.
Yes, I can only imagine. Yeah. What was the build up to that? So before Oprah called, before you get on Oprah's favorite thing list, what was the build up to you building out your community? Like, who were they? How intentional were you on finding them and all of that? As I mentioned earlier, I had the food blog. And so I had a bit of a following there. And it was young women. At the time, I was doing all kinds of food. So it was young women who were in a transition and were learning to cook. Maybe they now have their own kitchen spaces, or maybe they have new relationships that they want to nurture through food. And so that was the content that I shared. I did a lot of just hopping on my story, just talking through my day. And my day started to include going to the commercial kitchen when we first started. It started to include trips to the food mart and scaling recipes and just bits of my day peppered in. My husband was still playing at this time. So he's in Kansas City, we're down in Dallas, and I would make cookies, take them to daycare, and then we'd fly to Kansas City on the weekends, fly back Monday so I could ship cookies. And he would come down as often as he could to do farmers markets with me, but it was a grind. And I think that's where the community really started, because they were like, man, like, you make me feel like I could do something. Wow. I could do more, or I'm capable of more. And I think it was real. Like, it was just so real. Very rarely had makeup on. I had this bun that I hadn't combed out in 3 days. And they got to see all of that leading up to this, at the time, anticlimactic grand opening. But they rode with us. So. Do you think that you guys would have had the success that you had if you hadn't have started with community first?
No, absolutely not. I think the business is rooted in community, and I think the community gave us so much grace in those first days. And I think part of it was the pandemic, because everybody, like, food service was a scary place to work. And I think there was this huge shift during that time period, and we did not know what we were doing. I've never opened a restaurant. I was a terrible server. As that was my only experience in food, and we were just figuring it out as we went. And I think that grace came from the community, and I think it came from just the unusual circumstances of the pandemic. I think if we had started in more normal circumstances, let's say we had opened 2 months before we did, I think we potentially would have crashed and burned. I do think we'd have figured it out because I got confidence in myself to do that, but it would have been so much harder. Yeah. I feel like we'd have been digging ourselves out of a hole because we just didn't know.
What advice would you give someone who wants to, and I think you build community when you're building a product-based business, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that is a key ingredient to having a successful product-based business. But what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur who wants to really launch around community itself?
I think the biggest advice I would show up as your authentic self. You cannot keep a front for long. I think we see this from time to time. People starting platforms, and you want to come out all glossy and finished, but that's just not necessarily reality of building a business. I know you know that. There are a lot of nitty-gritty parts, and I think that's the part that gives your business, your product, character, and they want to see parts of that. I'm not saying you got to lay it all out, but I do think that it's a fine balance, and I think if your goal is community as you build, they want to see that process. They want to cheer for you as you go.
Yes.
So keep that in mind.
Oh my God. I feel like that's one of my biggest lessons. So I have Boss Women Media, which I'm like, we have community. Like, I know who our girl is. I've named her. I've tagged her. I have been her, and I have evolved, right? Like, but when I started Olivia, I just thought off of the back of Boss Women Media. And I found that not to be the case at all. And instead, I'm reverse engineering, and I'm building community along the way of me telling this story of why I even built this product-based business, right? And I'm like, well, everybody knows the story. And it's like, nobody knows the story, and you have to keep telling it over and over and over.
That part. You think everyone's heard it, and I get flagged for that all the time. My husband's like, no, you got to tell the story. Like, no, like, as we've gone on, we're in year 4, I start cutting off the front part. And he's like, no, that is the part. That's the part they want to hear. That's the relatable part.
Yep.
And you hit the nail on the head. Like, they want to know.
They want to know you came out of the trenches. Why? Yep. Because that gives somebody else hope to know that they can come out of the trenches. Yeah. That's so, so important. Okay, so tell me, like, you have this business that you've built. You've not necessarily had to take what would be the traditional route. Yeah. You've been fortunate in a lot of ways, right? So you haven't necessarily pitched from the perspective of investors, but you have pitched to retailers to take over storefronts and different things like that. Yeah. Tell us about your audacious pitch.
A lot of pitching, just in a different sense. Yeah. I have pitched to banks and got told no. But that's a different day. That's a different day. Yes. But as far as pitching to other retailers and stuff, you really got to shoot your shot. Mm-hmm. So one of my best pop-ups of all time, I DM'd Nordstrom's. The audacity to just DM Nordstrom Stonebriar. And the person running that account, God bless them, they got my message and the right person. I was like, I would love to pop up. And it was because I had been shopping and I saw somebody else doing that. Yeah. I said, why not me? I had no packaging, I had no boxes, and I barely had 7 flavors. But I said, why not me? And that was one of the most successful days we ever had. Ever. Wow. It was crazy, the rush that we had. Jeff had to run back to the commercial kitchen and bake more cookies. Wow. And I stood at that little table right before you get into the actual mall section. Yeah. That was a big one. I think that was where I got my first yes, but I've gotten a lot of no's along the way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people can't see your brand fitting with theirs or fitting with their product. It's not necessarily I don't like it. It's not necessarily it doesn't taste good. It just doesn't fit. And I've dealt with that as well. I think the key to pitching in those instances is to stay memorable. So when I'm pitching like that, I do bring cookies. I do wear Cookie Society stuff, or like really bright colors. And I try to lead with my personality because the brand and so many of the flavors are really mapped around my experiences and my personality. And I'm bubbly. I got a lot of energy to give. And our brand, I think, embodies that.
Absolutely.
And so when we go pitch, I think that's the part they remember. Yes, they'll remember if the cookie's amazing, but they're remembering who they're going to work with. Yeah. Not just necessarily, oh, the brand does well, here's X, Y, and Z number. I know my numbers, but I think those yeses are coming from, I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Yes. Or I'm excited to work with you. I love where your brand is headed, where you're taking it. Mm-hmm. That's why I want to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the no's, because so often, I mean, if I was looking on your Instagram, I'd be like, girl, everything is working out. We all know there is a behind the scenes to every Instagram reel that looks like it's all working out, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about the no's. Like, what have been some of your biggest challenges and how have you bounced back from them?
So some of the outright no's, I'll never forget the first one. I called every marketing and advertising agency probably in Dallas. Every single one of them got no's. Just straight up.
You were going to pay them.
Yes. They wouldn't let me give them my money.
Wow.
Yes. And they were just like, oh, not typically a brand we work with. Oh, we don't work in that space. Oh, call me back when you get bigger. And I was like, well, I need help getting bigger. Like, I was looking to you to run the social. You know what? Also a blessing. My husband runs all of that now. He is the marketing strategy, and he has found a true calling in it. Like, he embodies the brand. And I think if we weren't forced to learn it and to do it ourselves, I think, number one, would have got scammed. Because when I did finally get a yes, those prices were crazy. It was not within our budget. And so we had to work with what we were trying to work with. Mm-hmm. But I think all of those no's taught us to get a little more scrappy, a little scrappier. And there's nothing wrong with that. Getting your hands dirty and figuring it out. And I know they always say it, like, entrepreneurs wear all the hats. And I don't think you should wear them forever, because that's where burnout is.
Yes.
But at some point we have. Like, janitor, done that. Marketing, we've done that too. I've been the manager of every location at some point. Like, I have done shipments, I have done deliveries, I've done all of that. And I think that awareness and that familiarity with my business has helped us grow. Yes. Who else has told us no? Suppliers, oh, your volumes aren't big enough. Retail stores, when we were initially trying to go the wholesale route, no, I don't know if it's going to be a good fit, or do you have X, Y, and Z done? And we didn't. And once again, those just kind of pushed us to where we are today in the best way possible. So take them for what they are.
All right. So Oprah Winfrey calls. Everybody wants to be on the Oprah's favorite list. Like, that is like, Mama, I made it. How did she find you? Like, I know that we were post George Floyd. There's a lot of visibility to Black-owned brands. What a time to be alive as a Black person in America. Like, what did she say? How did she find you? Tell us.
The email felt like a scam. So it comes from her team. She has like a team. And they're like, hey, please put us in touch with your PR. All those hats. So I had to put that hat on. We didn't have PR.
I am PR.
New email, PR at Cookie Society, loading. And we responded. And she basically was like, we're interested in you for this. So we still don't know how she found us. But I had done a spread in Rachel Ray. We had like a 4-page spread in Rachel Ray like the month before she reached out. And I think that was kind of where the awareness came from. And it was just a blurb in there that I started a cookie company because we hadn't opened the doors yet. So it was still just delivery, like shipments. But that's where I suspect. But it was a series of conversations over, I would say, like a 6-month period. And we would send cookies. Now, they were remote. So I had to send cookies to every person on the team wherever they were working. Wow. I thought I was getting scammed because I sent probably 7 rounds of cookies, but that's probably 10 dozen per round.
Yes.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I just sending these cookies? Who's getting these? We're not getting feedback. They're just like, cool, you made it to the next round. Okay, good. She would like to see 12 distinct flavors versus doubling up on 6. You need some luxe packaging. That was all the email said. I said, well, what does that mean? So I start looking up the previous one. So I call this guy in Wisconsin. He's like, yeah, I make crates. I make like beer crates. I said, great. Can you make a crate for some cookies? He made it. This thing was 17 pounds. He sent it to me. And I'm like, oh, this is never going to work. I send it to her. She's like, yeah. Is there any way we could cut some of the weight off? The shipping would be insane. So had to figure that out. And we had some friends that helped us along the way with their suppliers. But we finally got the green light. And then 3 months later, it was just 3 or 4 months that we had to get everything together. They had no guesses for us as for how much we do in sales because they've never done it during the pandemic. And online sales were through the roof for everybody. So they're like, I don't even know what to tell you. Good luck. I hope you have enough. And that was really how we got from A to B. This was still while we were opening the store. Like, this was only probably a month or 2 after we had opened the doors.
Wow.
So everything was just new. Everything was new. But I think that was a saving grace because we hadn't gotten settled into any sort of routine.
Yes.
So when it came time to quadruple production for Oprah's favorite things, we were ready.
And so then what happened? The article comes out. The list is out, and then what happened?
The site crashed. After getting 100 orders an hour, over 100 orders an hour, we'd turn it off because it was starting to like glitch. So they weren't uploading onto our shipping software. And so I get a call, I promise within 30 minutes. Hey, I noticed your site's off. Is everything okay? And I was like, no, everything's not okay. We have hundreds of orders and it's only day 1. And he's like, well, I really need you guys to get that back live.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, oh my gosh. And so we were I think the kitchen was going 20 hours a day. We had added 2 extra shifts. If you walked in there and looked like you might want a job, I hired you. And we did all of it out of 1,500 square feet. Wow. We were in the hallway. We were up front. We were in the back. There was packing materials. I had just rounds, FedEx, UPS, all of them just coming behind each other just to pick up these boxes. And it was the longest 22 days of my life.
What's a guesstimated? How many orders did you send out in 22 days?
Oh my gosh, we ended up doing the math, but I think we were at 16,000 orders.
Wow.
I think is what we ended up doing. But that included, and that's our regular Christmas shipping too.
Right.
So it was, I think that's about what it was. We also did a number of like how many cookies we did, but we had some law firms. And they're like, I want to send 2 dozen to every customer I have. So that was 1,600 boxes there alone. I remember them because I want to tell them no so bad. But my sister-in-law was like, no, we're going to do it.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm glad she was there to push.
Yes, so. That's amazing. This is year 1 of business, right?
That was year 1.
Year 1 of in-store retailer, like I have a storefront of business. What an incredible first year.
It was.
And how have you been able to keep those customers engaged for the last couple of years?
So we used to change the menu weekly, but then we went to monthly, which actually was great for us. That was great because people who didn't get a chance in that 1 week to come see us now had that opportunity. And it allowed us a lot more time to speak to the product, to have a little bit more fun with the brand because I wasn't trying to rush people in because these cookies are about to leave the menu. I see a lot of people throw things at the wall to see if they're going to stick.
Yeah.
And that is my number one piece of advice is like slow down a little bit, give it some time to stick, and then take that feedback for what it is. If it doesn't stick after a longer period of time, maybe you do need to move on, but maybe it didn't fail. Maybe you just didn't try long enough.
Yeah, that's
So
really good.
That's what we learned, especially in that time period.
So tell us about your customer. Like I feel like you know your customer really well, especially to make a menu once a week, right? Like tell us about the behaviors of your customer and how you were able to really tap into them.
So we try to go for the nostalgia. So we're trying to tap back into those childhood memories. And what I discovered, and I can see them now when I go back and look at numbers, but the ones that most closely related to experiences I personally had do the best. The customers like me. It's like me and Jeff. They had snack cakes for lunch and they like to indulge on occasion and they want it to be worth it and they're fun and they're vibrant and we just have the best time. And I know we're on the right track because they compliment our music. They like the cookies and they like our team. Yeah. And so I feel I'm incredibly proud and grateful for what we've built because I feel like we bring so many people together that just don't know they need to be friends yet.
Yes.
So I think it's awesome.
What would you say to an entrepreneur who's tapping into figuring out who her customer is, right? Like, yeah. I want to be able to dive in, dig deeper. I want to be able to connect with my customer. What tips would you give her in finding and really being able to name and target her or him?
Yeah, just target that person. Number one, would you be a customer? You need to ask yourself that. Like, would you be a customer of this?
That's good.
And we spend a lot of time scrolling on TikTok and on Instagram. And what are you stopping on? What's calling to you? And then it's not just, oh, I like the product. It's like, do you like the way that she's explaining it or they're explaining it? Do you like the way that the reel or the video is set up? Like, what do you like about that? And if you keep gravitating to the same thing, save it in a folder. And you go back and you kind of craft your brand with those same feelings. I want to feel invited to someone's home when I'm looking or when I go look at food videos. And so we want to invite you into our home. Yeah. And the Cookie Societies kind of look like my living room, like the back display of all of them. And that was by design. We want you to feel comfortable and not take yourself too seriously. And you need to then attach those feelings. How do you want people to feel when they enjoy your product? How do you want people to talk about your product? Our greatest marketing tool has been word of mouth, and it has been other people talking about us when we're not in the room. Yes. And think about that. Like if you're selling a product, how do you want people to describe the clothes that you're about to sell or to describe the food that you make or the services? Oh, I worked with so-and-so and she was incredible and she just made me feel so comfortable and I left feeling so educated. You just really think about those things as you start to go through your day and have your interactions. And that's really how I think you can craft a brand versus just like making one.
Yes. So when you were starting out, like I definitely hear you and your husband have grinded and built this thing and put this machine together. But what was like that first hire you made when you were like, I'm about to put somebody on a salary. Yes. I'm not about to do this job anymore. Like, who was that person?
So I had a friend who I went to college with, and she was riding with me, and she would bring her mom in to help. She was my first hire, and she was really just a general hire, and she could do everything. So she's managed, she did HR. She actually relocated. She moved to Chicago, but she was my first hire. But my next hire, she was a customer for a long time, and she really just shot her shot. And I remember being so intimidated. I was like, we're not ready for her. What is she gonna do? We are a hot mess express. She has a background like Cane's, Sprinkles, Chick-fil-A. What is she doing with little old me? And she's like, no, I really can help you guys. Great pitch, an amazing pitch. She came in and really talked about how she could organize my business, which would then give me my life back. Because at the time, we were living and breathing Cookie Society, and that was all it took. And she was our first salaried employee. Wow. She's still with us today, and she has taught me so much. And I think you've got to take that leap. I always caution people, I think that first hire needs to be smarter than you or have something that they do better than you. Yeah. And so she had that area that she was really strong. She had never baked a cookie in her life. I was like, oh, I can teach you that part. But she had the other part that I didn't know and I wasn't picking up fast enough from books. And she was the part we really needed to grow.
I feel like so often if you are the CEO of something, you feel like you are supposed to know everything. That is a myth and a lie.
Absolutely.
And it will get you straight to burnout quicker than anything else.
Yes.
I love how you said that she was so much smarter than you. She could bring something to the table that was her superpower.
Right.
And you had your superpowers. And together, you guys made magic. I'm so sure.
She had the restaurant part that I just didn't have. Wasn't going to figure out probably for 3 more years because it was so much of it was just based on experience.
Yes.
And so find somebody with that experience that you don't have time to go get. And if you have the money for it or make the budget for it, that's where we started to really see some growth.
How have you been able to fund this business?
Yeah, so we self-funded when we started. Shout out to my husband's amazing career, grinding, taking all the hits, literally, figuratively for us. But we were very intentional about not overspending, and we wanted the business to support itself. And so when we talk about budget, it's like, well, did we make it? Like, does this make sense for where we are now? And there have been a lot of things that we've wanted to do or to throw money at, and we're like, that doesn't make any sense for what we're currently doing in sales. And so we probably need to nudge this up before we go drop all this money in marketing, because if all these people come in, we can't make the cookies. We'll just disappoint them. And we were very intentional about that part. And I would say even somewhat conservative from that area. And that's why we've been a little slower to grow. So we just opened store number 3 in South Lake. But it is 3 years, almost 4, after we opened Frisco. But that was very much by design. We want to make sure that things were going well before we hopped off and moved on. Next one?
What's the long game here?
Man, that's the part I feel like we are really coming to the crossroads. I feel like before it was like, we're going to put our head down and keep working. But we're getting better at opening stores now. And we definitely have a couple more in the Dallas area in works already for the rest of 2024. And it's really 2026 that we're looking at, that we're trying to figure out in 25. But our goal is always to take over Dallas and like the Texas market. We want to be the cookie of Dallas, the cookie of Texas. Yes. So when somebody comes to town, oh my gosh, you have to go to Cookie Society.
Yes.
That was the goal. And so now we're broadening the horizons a little bit and trying to see.
Well, listen, you are the cookie. Your cookies are the truth. I mean, like, delicious.
It's working.
So, like, tell me, like, who is this a family recipe? Is this who gave you these recipes? Like, and they're all, I mean, like, they're flavors that, like, I wouldn't have put together or or thought of for a cookie.
Yes. So, no, my family's not cookie people. They weren't. They are now. They were pies and cakes. So my grandma had a small cake business, and she made breads. And so I grew up in the kitchen, but we weren't making cookies. We were making pecan pies and German chocolate cakes. And so a lot of the flavors are based off of those experiences. I've rolled a lot of pies into cakes, a lot of pies into cookies, a lot of cakes into cookies, because that's what I'm familiar with. When I told them I was going to make cookies, they were like, but why? you have Nana's cake recipe, you have Nana's pie recipe, why? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it hasn't been done. And we actually started the same year that Crumble did. Wow. And so I think there was just this like kind of wave. A lot of us all around the country were having this same experience, but doing it our own way. And I think that's what's been really cool about it, is we've been in this for a while, trying to find our own lane, and feel like we found it.
Absolutely love it. So, obviously on this podcast, we're talking to and sharing the stories of audacious women, right? But in our tribe, we don't want to just tell you the story. We want to build you up for you to be your own audacious woman. So what advice would you give to a woman who's sitting on the footsteps of thinking about doing something else, doing more, right? Whether that's opening up a retail shop, whether it's launching her business and taking it to the next level, whether it's quitting her corporate job, right? What advice would you give to her?
You just have to get started. I think we spend so much time in the planning phase. Nobody has a perfect launch. I'm sure you know, like, can speak to that. Nobody has a perfect launch. And so you just have to get it out there. And I think once you are able to start receiving that feedback, that's when you can really start to tailor it. And don't let anybody's no be the reason that you don't go for it. Only your no could keep you from going for it. And so there's going to be a lot of people. Why would you do that? 100 people have done that. Oh, there's 1 million retail stores. Well, there's 101 burger brands. Exactly. It's not stopping people from selling burgers.
Right.
And I think you just got to go for it. I have 2 kids at home. I have an amazing support system, but it can be done, especially if you plan on going at your own pace. Yeah. And so don't let those be the reasons you just don't even try.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I think that there's something so incredibly powerful that you started this with a 6-month-old. You said a 2-year-old at the house, right? Yes. I can totally attest. I got 7-month-old twins at the house and a 3-year-old at the house. Yeah. But they're watching everything, especially my 3-year-old. She takes everything in, and I want to show her she can do and be anything in this world. Yes. And I think the first role model, specifically little girls see, are their moms.
Yes.
So you talked about your daughter being your driving force. What are you excited to build for her to make her pathway a little easier?
Man, I'm just excited to really speak to the creative side. My parents were, principal. She finished as a principal, but she was a teacher. My dad, a local insurance agent. And I was definitely going to take a more conservative, conventional path. Mm-hmm. I was going to probably go into accounting because that's safe. And I really want her to know, number one, we got you. I want you to go for it. You only get one life to live. Yeah. And so I want her to see, well, mom and dad kind of went for it. Like, dad just defied all odds. Mom's defying odds. As a Black woman in this space, there's not a lot of us. Yeah. And I want her to see herself in that role. And I don't even want it to be a question. Like, I had to overcome so many just personal things just in my mind, like, why? No, Marissa, no one's done it because you're not supposed to do it. Like, that's what my mind was telling me. Mm-hmm. And I had so many reasons to hold myself back, but I can already see it in my daughter. Like, she doesn't have that. Yeah. She isn't, those things don't have a hold on her like they did me. And so we're already on the right track. Yeah. And I know your daughter's looking at the same.
Oh my God, this next generation is a force to be reckoned with, to say the least. But I'm so excited for them. What you talked a little bit about, like, some of the blocks you had to put into, different compartments. What does your morning routine look like? I love asking people, what are the things that they do first in the morning? You can learn a lot about a person from it, but what is your morning routine? And the second half of my question to that is, who is your person that helps you, push the limitations or the limits that you put on yourself aside?
Ooh, I love both of those. As far as the morning, I'm a morning person.
Okay.
4:30, I'm getting up before the alarm. I like that hour alone. My house is silent. My kids are still asleep. My husband's still asleep. I'm trying to get up and start with water. It used to be a very big cup of coffee. That comes later. Mm-hmm. I always start with one load of laundry, and I start with a calendar scroll. I know people say not to, but I need to know. Like, what am I getting into today? What's on my calendar? And then I do the rush. We got 1 hour, get those kids ready and out the door to school. And then often I head straight to the office. So we do have an office that 4 of us work out of. So I like to be first to the office too. I just like that moment when things are hitting me for left and right. My favorite day is Monday because the stores aren't open. Yeah. And I feel like I get the most work done. But I like a slower start. I like to have control of my mornings. I don't want my mornings to control me. That's probably the only things that are set in stone because, like I said, my kids are young. Yeah. So 8 and 7 there's not much that's going to go right in the mornings, not right now. But as far as the person pushing me, it's 100% my husband. He has that go for it gene that I was not born with. And he has the why not you ingrained in him. And he's the one that's just like, are you done? Are you done? Are you going to get out of your head today? Okay, let's keep going. Yeah. And he's been a huge part of that. And then I have 3 amazing friends that keep me really grounded that I call in succession on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right after drop off. So
I love that. Well, okay, on this season of the podcast, we tried something new, and we have a very small, intimate, invite-only audience with us. And I would love to hear from our audience on any questions they may have for you. And us engaging in a little bit of dialogue with them.
I love it.
Going through your journey and kind of the grind and what it took for you to get your own way. Now, with the success, we know comes people. Yes. Everybody wants to partner with you. Everybody wants to see what they can do to get in the fold. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with that? Like, what's the process of discernment and realizing who is there for you and that wants to help the brand and who is just trying to figure out a way to come up?
I love that question. Are we both going to answer it?
You go ahead.
Okay, I love that question. I think the best thing that I did for my business, aside from my first hire that we discussed, was I got somebody to comb through those emails. It's currently our sales director, but that was really weighing on me because the no's, they get easier, but I do still feel some type of way when I have to break it. No, hey, that doesn't align or that's not going to work out. But having her kind of filter through those has been huge for my mental health. So when that opportunity comes, take it. But also, I think we just had such a clear picture of who we want to support. My husband and I have a soft spot for food insecurity and for children. And so if it doesn't really fall in those two, it is a little bit easier. We're like, hey, I support you, but I'm not going to be able to do that right now because these are the causes that we're really focused on right now. And I get a lot of people asking just for some time. And my answer is it's true. It's my time is for my family and my kids right now in this season. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to say that.
Yes. I love that. I got to start saying no more and saying my time is for my family right now and this year.
Yes.
That is true.
I think there's time and season to say a lot of yeses.
Yes.
I do, but, protect yourself. Protect your peace.
Yes. I love that. All right. You got a question?
So much. I'm truly inspired by your story, and I teared up over here as you were telling it. So I'm going to keep my question light. You talked about experiences and building community. Can you tell us, 1, what was the best experience as a consumer that you've ever had? And 2, like the one that stands out. And 2, what do you see for your brand in terms of brand experience going forward?
Ooh, those are really good. As far as experiences, I think it was, one of them was our honeymoon. Not just because it was our honeymoon, but everyone there just made me feel seen, which I loved and just cared for. And when I go to restaurants, I love that too. Like when you remember something or if you have a personal suggestion that can enhance my experience, I love that. I'm going to tell everybody I just left that my server was amazing. I don't know what it's going to do for you, but I hope you know that my server at Drake's 2 weeks ago was amazing. And I look for those like, did you look me in the eye? Did you look up? Did you have something to contribute? I appreciate that. And then the second half of the question, so the in-store experience is my wheelhouse. That's the part that I deal with as far as the brand goes. And I think my favorite part right now is that we're getting to different parts of town so people can have that same experience without having to drive so far. We field a lot of requests. Come to my city. We're trying to get there. We are trying, but we just want to make sure that you get greeted when you walked in. That's huge. I want to hear a very loud and resounding, hi, welcome to Cookie Society. We always leave with, is it your first time? Oh my gosh, you're in for a treat. Or these are my personal favorites. Or they explain how it works. I hate when I go somewhere and they're just like looking at me. And I'm like, I've never been here before. Like, what you got for me? Yeah, I was like, you tell me. And I think that that's one of the things that we're constantly striving for. We don't always get it right. And it takes a lot of training. And when you hire a bunch of new people at once, it can be hard. But that's what we're going for. We want you to feel welcome. And we even have customers that go as far as say, like, my day gets better when I go there. And that's all I want to hear.
So my question to you is going to be, how does balance look like? Because as an entrepreneur, you spend, I'm sure, a lot of hours in your business. But how does it look for with that me time by yourself? How does that balance look like for you?
That's also great. Oh, y'all got the good questions. It's changed. It's evolved. So when I first started, the balance was there, but not like it is now. I had to say yes to a lot of things because we were trying to grow a brand and we were building. You know, you kind of have to earn the right to say no, I would say. That's probably a better way to put it. But that balance was non-negotiables. Like, I'm not going to miss a performance. I'm not going to miss a game. I'm not missing those things for my kids. And if I don't have someone who can fill in for me and represent me or the brand, well, then we're just going to have to kindly decline. My husband and I think are bottom of the list when it comes to that connection. But I think we're aligned on that because, number one, we spend all day, every day together. And we just have a different understanding. He's my person. But our kids are coming first right now, and they need to see us show up for them and show up for them individually as well as together has been really important. So that one-on-one time. So that's where the balance is coming from. It brings me a lot of joy. I think I probably appreciate it 10 times more now that I do have long days, or at beginning, I was pulled away from home more than I wanted to be. I have appreciation for that time that we get to spend together. I think now the balance is I can kind of craft my own schedule. So I do 1 week in office and I'm looking at spreadsheets, I'm answering calls, taking business meetings, and then I do a week in the field. And I'm at the stores, I'm visiting, I'm meeting with customers, getting that kind of in-person feedback. And then I can start my day early and I can end it early. So I am typically home by 4. God bless the grandparents. They help us with after school care. But I'm almost always home by 4 and I'm not working at home. I don't bring it home. I'm going to work at the office. I might get up and do those emails or a little light work in the morning, but I do my best when I'm 100% focused at work. And so I've structured my day to accommodate that. So it will come eventually, the balance.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for being a guest on the Audacity of Ambitious Women, Season 2. Your story is definitely like no other. And listen, the best is yet to come.
Yes,
I am so excited for you. Crumble what?
Thank
Listen,
you.
the Cookie Society is about to be worldwide, and I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Tell everybody where they can find you and where they can order some cookies at.
So you can find cookies at cookiesociety.com. All the handles are at Cookie Society. If you want to connect with me, please send me a message. I would love it. I'm at First in Full. And I also have started my own brand called Hey Marissa. So heymarissa.com. I can also help you out through there.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked today's episode, which I hope you did, drop us a line, send us a message, and let us know how we did. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Audacity of Ambitious Women, Season 2, The Pitch. As always, thank you for listening to this episode of the Audacity of Ambitious Women. If you like what you heard, and I'm sure you did, please let us know. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and drop us in the group chat to spread the word. It's time to be audacious.